35 minutes in, and we should have been standing outside, basking in our victory. We thought we had solved every puzzle, cracked every code, but instead, the door swung open, revealing something neither of us had expected. I glanced at Sarah, her excited smile fading into uncertainty. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. Suddenly, the intercom crackled, and Rayo's voice slithered through the room, slowly and sinisterly. Well done. But this was just a warm-up. Now, the real game begins. That's when I knew this wasn't an escape room anymore. It was a nightmare. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. I shifted uncomfortably in the driver's seat, eyes flicking between the road and the ominous sky ahead. The closer we got, the heavier the weight on my chest became. Sarah, my girlfriend, sat beside me and was bouncing with excitement. I'm so happy we could do this for a date night tonight. You've been spending so much time cooped up in that office that I was worried that you were getting overworked. I gave her a slight, semi-reassuring grin. This one's supposed to be way harder than any of the others, she said with a wide-eyed smile. I bet we'll crack it in no time. Her confidence was infectious, but it didn't suit the growing unease that gnawed at my gut. The truth was, I wasn't distracted by work like she thought. Sarah believed I was burning the midnight oil at the office, but in reality, my mind was elsewhere, for reasons I couldn't get into. Not yet. Chris, you good? She asked, nudging my shoulder. You look like you're headed to a funeral. I'm fine, just thinking, I muttered. It was a lie, but I didn't have the energy to explain. She shrugged, turning her attention back to her escape room strategy as we pulled into the parking lot. The building loomed ahead of us, shrouded in fog. The air felt colder than it should, and an unsettling chill settled in my bones. Spooky, right? Sarah giggled, unfazed. Perfect for a horror-themed room. I didn't respond. Something felt off, more than just the usual pre-game nerves. This place had a presence, like it was watching us. I shook the idea from my head as we walked towards the entrance. Inside, the atmosphere was even thicker. Dim lights barely illuminated the front desk, where a pale, sickly-looking man with cold eyes greeted us. His name tag read Rayo, and his smile was unsettling. You must be Chris and Sarah, he said, his voice almost too soft to hear. Welcome, the challenge. He didn't blink as he gestured us to follow him. Sarah, always the optimist, led the way. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the crawling feeling under my skin. Something about Rayo's presence unsettled me. He felt less like a host and more like a predator, watching his prey. We followed him down a narrow corridor, where the air grew colder with every step. The walls felt like they were watching us, and I had to force myself to keep moving. Rayo finally stopped at a door at the end of the hall, pulling out a rusty key. He turned it slowly, the lock clicking open with an unnerving echo. This is your escape room, he said, his voice low. You have 60 minutes to solve the puzzles and escape. You have 3 hints. Use your hints wisely. He opened the door, revealing a dimly lit room with a few scattered props. It seemed simple enough, nothing too ominous at first glance. In the center was a desk with a small tea set and what appeared to be a sliding puzzle next to one of the teacups. There was also a desk lamp, but the room felt far more sinister than it should have. My gut churned. Sarah clapped her hands. All right, let's get started. I wasn't as eager. The shadows clung to the walls, shifting unnervingly as we stepped into the room, but I tried to push the feeling down. It was just a game, right? Sarah quickly scanned the desk and noticed a note under one of the teacups. She picked it up and read aloud. An inverse of no, it's all in the switch. Your tea becomes heavy when added to this. She frowned and turned to me. What do you think, Chris? I glanced at the desk lamp, and after taking a minute or two to think about it, the wordplay clicked into place. It's a word puzzle. No backwards is on, the inverse of no. And if you add T to on, you get ton. Ton is heavy, and on, it's related to a switch, like the lamp. Sarah grinned and flicked the switch on the lamp, illuminating a figure in the corner of the room. A man, slumped against the wall, his eyes missing, staring into nothing. I recoiled, my skin crawling. The sight of the eyeless man unnerved me far more than I wanted to admit. That's gotta be a prop, right? I asked. though I wasn't convinced. Sarah waved it off. Part of the game. Chris, come on, let's focus. I tried to shake the unease, but now, every creak, every shadow seemed more sinister. Let's find the next clue, Sarah said, but before she could move, I spotted something. A small note in the man's pocket. I crouched, hesitating before plucking it out. The man's waxy skin felt warm to the touch, as if he were suffering from a fever. The note read, "It's getting pretty hot. I could use a little air. Can you help me cool down? Look, right over there." The note's odd wording sent a chill down my spine. My eyes darted around the room before landing on an old AC unit. I moved towards it, already feeling a sense of dread. With shaky hands, I flipped the switch. The AC sputtered to life, but slowly after it came a thick, unnatural fog that gradually began to fill the room. The shadows danced along the walls, growing darker, more ominous. "This feels wrong," I muttered, stepping back from the vent. "Relax, it's just part of the atmosphere," Sarah said, but I could tell, even she was beginning to feel uneasy. The air and the fog stirred up a stack of papers under the desk, revealing 3 blood-stained sheets marked A, B, and C. Sarah sighed. "There's our next clue." I shook under the desk. I crouched, examining the papers. There were riddles on each one, but something told me they weren't all useful. However, on the backs of each of the papers was the same message. "Which one's the right one? Puzzling, isn't it?" Sarah read, a hint of tension creeping into her voice, but her usual enthusiasm was gone. I could tell that she wasn't as calm as before. She took a deep breath and moved to the sliding puzzle on the desk, her fingers shaking slightly as she began to work through it. While she fiddled with the puzzle, I glanced again at the lifeless man. The details were disturbingly realistic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Got it," Sarah said triumphantly, pulling the C paper from the pile. "This is the one." I took it from her and unfolded the paper, revealing yet another riddle. "This letter sees best when the light becomes black," which seems a bit off, but they like it like that. Realizing that whatever this letter was needed to be in the dark, I moved to the wall and flipped the light switch, and once I did, something began to glow in the dark. It was the teapot on the desk. We both stared as we walked over to the teapot in the center of the table, but something about it felt wrong. Sarah reached for it, her fingers brushing against its cool surface. The moment she picked it up, there was a loud click, and the wall behind her creaked. A hidden panel had opened up, revealing a keypad with numbered buttons. I turned the lights back on for Sarah, but my attention was on the teapot. Slowly, I lifted the lid, my stomach churning with dread. Inside the teapot were eyeballs, pale, lifeless eyeballs, floating in the dark liquid. I almost dropped the teapot, my hands trembling as I set it down. Sarah looked at me, eyes wide. "Chris?" she asked cautiously. "I think the answer is I for eyeballs," I stammered, struggling to wrap my head around what we just uncovered. Sarah's face paled, but she forced herself to stay focused. She picked up the note that had fallen out of the panel, and it read, "Exit code. Numbers never lie, but there's a small lie in this pattern. Add the letters from the clues before. That's all that really matters." We both hesitated for a few minutes, staring at the numbers on the keypad. I tried to think through the pattern, but my mind was racing, clouded with fear. "Wait," Sarah whispered, glancing over the clues again. "On, AC, C, I?" She paused, frowning. "It's not making sense. What does a small lie have to do with numbers?" We both stood there in silence for what felt like forever, the air growing thicker, the fog making it harder to breathe as the timer counted down our remaining time to solve this final puzzle. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. Finally, it clicked. "It's the Fibonacci sequence," I said, my voice barely audible. "The small lie, it's the fib in Fibonacci. 0112358. That has to be the code." Sarah stared at me for a moment, processing the answer before nodding. With shaking hands, she entered the code. The door unlocked, and with a loud click, the countdown timer stopped. But instead of the exit, it opened to a smaller, darker room. 35 minutes in, and we should have been standing outside, basking in our victory. We thought we had solved every puzzle, cracked every code, but instead, the door swung open, revealing something neither of us had expected. The door wasn't supposed to lead to another room, right? The air was colder here, more oppressive, almost suffocating, and the hairs on my neck stood up. I glanced at Sarah, her excited smile fading into uncertainty. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. Suddenly, the intercom crackled, and Rayo's voice slithered through the room, slow and sinister. "Congratulations," he whispered. "You've passed the first challenge." "First challenge?" I asked. No. We won. You gotta let us out of here," I protested. But that was just the warm-up. Now, the real game begins, and you won't be able to leave," he said, as I heard a click, and the ceiling began to lower itself as our timer resumed. "Until you finish it." I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized we were trapped. That's when I knew this wasn't just an escape room anymore. It was a nightmare, and there was no going back. Thank you for staying until the end of the show. I appreciate you giving me some of your time, and I look forward to seeing you again. If you can tell me what you thought of today's episode, that would help me so I know what things to give you more of. And if you want to hear more of my voice, then tune in next week for a new episode, or go back and catch the last one. I'll be doing my best to post once a week on YouTube and Spotify, so let me know if you like this stuff, and I'll keep making more of it. But until then, I hope I gave you chills, excitement, or a fright. Thank you for listening, and to all, a good night.